Recording in progress.
Hello, hello. Darcy, you're still at work?
No, I decided that with a 3-year-old at home, coming back to work would be smarter.
I have done the same thing.
Yeah.
That's
Plus,
awesome.
I have a giant whiteboard. My little tiny whiteboard at home is less than stellar.
Yes. Well, very good. Thanks for hanging with us.
Absolutely.
Zach, how are you?
Let me just get my mic. There we go. Hey, Glenn, how are you?
All right, good.
I'm doing well.
Now, where do you teach again?
I'm no longer in your neck of the woods. I accepted a position at Grays Lake Central High School.
Oh, you did?
So I'm gonna miss seeing you all at District 9.
Yeah.
There's been a lot
So
of movement
Grays
in
Lake
U46.
Central, you
Yeah.
said? Okay. Who left there?
Dominic Bertino.
Okay. Did he retire or what?
Mm-hmm.
Nice. So you're taking over for, do you know the program at all or not really?
Yeah, well, I mean, I know it as well as I can.
Okay. But you haven't like worked there before or known them very well?
No, I have friends who teach up in that area in the northern Lake County area, so
yeah,
learning fast.
Yeah, I'm sure. Have you started jumping with some summer camps and things yet?
Trying. You know, the information that we like to send out in April and May
never got out.
Getting sent out in June. So, yeah, I'm like writing an email right now, trying to clarify some information.
Yeah, that's great. Well, that's really cool. Congrats.
Thank you. And if you know anyone that wants to work in U46, boy, tremendous turnover there.
Oh yeah, I'll bet.
Dobick Senior has left. Larkin just opened up again, and well, they filled my position, but that's it.
Wait, Dobick Senior? You mean like South Elgin?
Like Kurt, yeah.
Oh no way! Did he retire?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Well, I mean, all of his kids are band directors now, so he's got to be at retirement age. There's like 7 of them being band directors.
Yeah, right.
What does he have? Like 12 kids?
I think like 6 or 7.
I think it's 7. Yeah, maybe I'm exaggerating. That's great. Yeah. And Darcy, you're in the midst of the Midwest prep.
Yes, I am.
I can't. So you've done it before, right?
I have. We played in 2015.
So you feel really far behind compared to how you felt last time?
I don't, because I have severely changed what my expectation is for this.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's fine. Like we're going to play great stuff. It's going to be really good. It's just not going to be, it's not going to be a grade 4. That's for sure.
Yeah. I can imagine. I mean
I'm
getting into a summer camp right now with my kids, and it's middle school band and high school band. And I knew what the high schoolers were going to sound like because I had already been teaching them, but I wasn't sure what the middle school had experienced in the last couple of months. And, you know, some of them are rocking and rolling and some of them are lost as ever could be. So it's like, just take them where they are and go for it.
That's exactly right. I shrunk my band down by about 15 kids. So we're quite a bit smaller than we would normally be. But I mean, I had to be super picky knowing that almost all of my beginners were at home.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I had to be really careful who I took on this journey.
Yes.
They're doing great. This is my last week of sectionals. I've got 2 more sectionals tomorrow, and then they have 5 weeks off, and I don't see them again until the very end of July. But you know, we're doing the best we can with what we got, and they're going to be awesome.
Well, being that you've done it before, I'm sure you don't have like quite the freak out because you kind of know what to expect. So
if this was my first time to go to Midwest under these circumstances, I would be having a heart attack.
I'm sure. I don't know how, I don't know. I mean, there's got to be a couple first-time people. I don't know how they're doing it. So.
Well, the other middle school people are all first-time people, and I've been talking to them quite a bit, just trying to like calm them down. It's like nobody had a normal year. Nobody is going to expect you to be like the next CSO.
I mean, the fact that they're going to like be traveling to Chicago with middle schoolers and giving a concert is like, I'm not sure you could really expect a whole lot more than like, you know, logistically speaking, it's going to be tough. So.
Sure. Well, at least the other school from the Austin area that got picked, they were not allowed to have a concert at all last year. So it will legitimately be like a first experience.
Yeah. Yeah. So all the districts were kind of doing like some things a little different around you too. Yeah. We had some pretty like statewide kind of things, or at least like, you know, area wide kind of things. But then there were some schools that hardly changed anything, and some that were like, yeah, we're not playing or singing at all. So it's been really interesting. So, all right. Well, all of our friends are signing on here. There's a lot of them in this class, which is cool. So if there's a little bit of me like looking around for screens and stuff, I'm just trying to figure out who's here. How's everybody doing? Anybody have anything fun to share that you did today, or anything you did that was cool at school, or anything exciting happening in your life? Eric, nothing?
Okay, well, I got that Chicagoland Educators Award recently. That was kind of nice.
Yes.
Thanks. That was a nice win at the end of a crazy year. You know what I mean?
Bravo.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I keep saying I think everybody deserves an award at the end of the year we all went through.
Yeah. No, you're doing great stuff.
Well, thanks. That's means a lot coming from me. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So
is anybody actually teaching at school this week? Doing like band camps or anything like that? I am. I'm finishing my second week of band camps, which is pretty fun.
Last day of school for us.
Oh, are you like an East Coaster, Mike?
Oh, no, I'm in Chicago.
Oh, you are? Oh, you're in Chicago. Okay, yeah. Yeah, they go.
Yeah.
I always know that the East Coast people go till like July 1st. You know, I grew up in New Jersey. So like I graduated high school, I think on June 23rd or something obnoxious like that.
That's crazy. That's way too late.
But they take so many breaks throughout the year. You know, they'll take like a winter break and a spring break. So it's, you know, they just push it out further. So, well, very good. Well, everyone, I think we can kind of get started here, and I know everyone's like signing on and everything, but thanks for all your great posts. Let me make sure I'm recording. Yeah, I am recording. Speaking of recording, I recorded last week's session, and then the online program that sends me the recording, Panopto, it never generated a recording. So I'm working with them to get that, like, you know, found, or, you know, it went into like cyber space somewhere, and I'll get that recording up if you wanted to watch that again. Otherwise, if they can't retrieve it, I'm going to probably redo it so that you guys have a record of that presentation from last week. We are recording, as you can see, tonight, so it should generate a link, and we'll be in there if you want to rewatch this one. And I just put a discussion post up today that was geared towards rhythm, because we are joined by Darcy Williams today and next week, and her topic, as I mentioned in there to start off today, is going to be I think geared more towards rhythm, and I'm really excited to have her with us. So Darcy, how about before we get started with rhythm, how about just a quick little introduction of like where you teach and how long you've been there, and your recent or most exciting things happening in your program right now?
Sure. My name is Darcy Williams. I'm going into my 18th year of teaching. I teach here in Texas. I teach in Leander ISD, which is a suburb north of Austin. I've been here. I opened the school 10 years ago. So I started the program from scratch and have been just extremely lucky with, our families and how far the kids are willing to let us push them. I'm in my 4th week of preparing my kids to play at Midwest in December. We were supposed to play there last December, and then, the world collapsed. So we are taking a group of kids who have mostly been online all year to Midwest next year, and hopefully it goes well. But that's kind of the biggest excitement that's going on right now.
Yeah. And where'd you go to college and where'd you do your education?
Sure. I grew up in a teeny little 1-horse, 7 churches, 3 taxidermy town. And then I went to college at West Texas A&M and got my bachelor's of music there in 2004. And then I came back to Central Texas as quickly as I could because West Texas is a different animal. But so I've spent all 18 years in the Austin area. I started out in a rural Title I school, and then I moved. I was there for 6 years. I went to an inner city Title I school for 2 years, and then I opened Styles in 2012.
Okay, very good. And what do you play?
I play flute.
Nice. My wife plays flute. My brother's wife plays flute, and my sister's husband plays flute. It's like every Schneider kid married a flautist.
You got lucky.
Yeah, or something like that. I'm a percussionist, so I'm lucky, right, Angela? I know you're a percussionist. Woo! All right. Well, you can kind of take it away here and let me know what you need in terms of, like, I made you co-host, and I'm here to help, but the time is yours. And my friends in the class here, we're going to go till about 8-ish Central Time, maybe a few minutes after. If you have questions, I'm sure Darcy would love to answer those at the end. But yeah, take it away, and thanks again for sharing your thoughts on this.
Absolutely. Of all of the clinics I've given, this is the one that gets asked for the most. And initially, when it was getting so much interest, I thought it was kind of strange because rhythm is such a basic concept that it's interesting that so many school districts or, state music education conventions would want to hear about this. But I think rhythm is one of those things that, because it is so basic, sometimes we forget how to break it down. Probably none of us really have strong memories of beginner band. And so most of us don't really remember how some of these really, really basic concepts were first taught to us. And so for those of you that are veteran teachers, because I know most of you are, what I'm hoping is that maybe tonight you'll have an idea for a new approach that you might take with rhythm with some of your kids. If you're a younger teacher, maybe this is the first time you've really started thinking about breaking this down, maybe in a more effective way with your kids. But we're going to go through a lot of stuff with how I have taught rhythm throughout my career, the way we do here at Styles Middle School. What I'm not going to be talking about is what the best rhythm counting system is, because I think that the best counting system you could possibly use is a consistent one, like one that all of your staff uses, percussion included, and hopefully one that travels from beginner band all the way up through high school, so that all of the kids in your program and all of your teachers are using a common language when it comes to this. There's a billion different ways to teach band, and most of them are right. And I'm really just hoping that tonight we can come up with something that might be a little easier or more efficient with your kids. So we're going to be talking a lot about progression, wording, pace, and the regularity, which we use with our kids at Styles. And so in the beginning, there was rhythm. But for a lot of band directors, that's not what they start with. A lot of band directors start with tone first, start with sound production and that kind of thing. I wholeheartedly believe that rhythm is the easiest way and the most efficient way to start all of your kids. If y'all are like me, you end up on the first day of school with kids that have just moved in, kids that haven't been placed yet, or kids that were placed previously and showed up with no supplies. And if it's anything like what we have at Styles, it takes a while for those kids to get their stuff. And so years and years and years ago, we started teaching rhythm on the second day of school, and we don't touch the instrument for the first 2 weeks. And for a lot of band directors, that seems scary because then like you're already behind. But it gives all of the kids time to get all of their stuff. It gives the three of us, there are 3 directors at my school. It gives the 3 of us a chance to make sure that every single kid has all of the right supplies and get the wrong stuff swapped out if necessary. And it gives all of the kids, regardless of where they came from, because our kids come from 5 different elementaries with 5 different ways of approaching elementary music, if they're even at a school that has it, because a lot of our schools or a lot of our elementaries in my school district no longer teach elementary music. It gives all of the kids a chance to start band on square one with the exact same information and getting everybody caught up fundamentally. So during those first 2 weeks of school, we are spending all of our time doing rhythm fundamentals, getting our kids to learn and memorize note flashcards, understanding how the staff works. We're checking supplies. And then by the time those 2 weeks are over, our kids feel like band pros, even though they haven't even touched their instrument yet. There's so many things that the kids do know how to do that by the time they get to start their instrument, we have a lot of processes that have already been outlined for our kids. So those first few days of learning how to do sound production are extremely organized, extremely calm, and are a direct extension from everything that we've already been doing with rhythm. Like there is never a moment where it's like a chaotic, like, let's see what happens. Everything is extremely organized and laid out because of all the work we do with our rhythm. At Styles, we use, and in fact, actually most of our district and a large amount of Texas, and heck, a lot of people across the country at this point use the rhythm charts that we use. Very, very early on in my career, I realized that we needed some sort of book or some sort of curriculum for rhythm. At the school I taught at, there were 4 directors. We all taught with different rhythm systems. It was very clear to me very early on that all of my kids that were the bottom band at the middle school were coming in with just fractured information for how rhythm worked. And so I started a more cohesive system in which I taught the rhythm stuff to every single beginner in our program. And by the next year, that served my band, the bottom band, dividends, because we had that common language and I knew the information that every kid was coming in with. Now, like, you know, in the back of every single beginner book is some little rhythm charts. And there's never enough material on any one concept. It moves through it very quickly. And to be perfectly honest, I don't like the progression that most beginner books choose to introduce this stuff. So I sat down and I took every rhythm chart from every beginner book that I could possibly find. I made copies of it. I cut it out. I readjusted things. And I came up with our charts that we use that goes in a very specific logical order of introduction to concepts. And, you know, all rhythm charts, all beginner books are trash. Like they all have huge gaps in what they expect the kids to be able to achieve. And our charts, I'm sure, have their, you know, their shortcomings as well. But I really like how much material our charts use and how many different ways, because of how much material we have, how many different ways we can use them. And it's the progression that I think is so wildly important. So what I'm going to do is I came to the band hall tonight so that I could do this for real. I've got my harmony director right here. I've got my whiteboard and some markers that are hopefully going to work. And I'm basically going to take you through a crash course of exactly how we teach our kids from scratch on day 1, and then how we incorporate all of this information into things on a daily basis, including with our older kids all the way through honors band. So on the very first day of teaching rhythm, which is the second day of school. So on the first day, you know, we're just giving rules. We're introducing ourselves to the kids. We're telling them basically how band works. And then we hit the ground running on the second day. Every single kid in our program gets a copy of our rhythm charts, and we spend a lot of money copying this stuff every year. We spend a lot of money copying it, but it's so important that every kid has it. We require that the kids have binders with plastic pages. They do not receive a copy of the charts until they show us the plastic pages in the binder, because I spent so much money copying them that if you lose them, I'm gonna be real irritated. Oh, wow, hang on. Pause.
Hey, while we're paused, if there's any new Zoom people on here, like if you have never used Zoom until, this summer, you can go up to the right corner of your screen and hit view, and then you can make Darcy's screen on speaker view, like your big
Oh, yeah.
blown up screen.
Make me big.
Yes, so you can see the charts.
I picked a really cute shirt to wear tonight too. Okay, so on the second day of school, the kids that have shown us that they have their binder and then they have their plastic pages, we pass out the rhythm charts. And these are things that we asked the kids to get back in April when they tested instruments with us. So they've known about it for a long time. They've had plenty of time to acquire this stuff. So we pass out the rhythm charts and I teach them how to sit up in their chair. We practice going back and forth. And then I turn on the metronome. And I just kind of wait and watch the class. And I see which kids are going to spontaneously start tapping their foot. Like which of these kids already knows what to do. And I'll say something like, ooh, I see that one of you has already started doing something without me even asking. And then the kids start looking around trying to figure out who is doing something. Oh, okay, now there's like 5 of you doing it. And finally, the entire class has figured out that we are tapping our foot with the metronome. And I say, okay, what did y'all start doing? And a kid will raise their hand and say, we started tapping our foot. Okay, we're tapping our foot. Can anybody tell me what we are tapping our foot to? And some really smart kid will say the metronome, and I'll say, no, I want an easier answer. And they'll tell me that they started tapping their foot with the beat. I say, okay, we are tapping our foot with the beat. And every single time we have one beat, our foot goes down, up. For every single beat, my foot goes down and then up. So we have down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. And we have a symbol that shows us what that one beat looks like. And in music, one beat is symbolized with this thing. Can anybody tell me what this thing is called? And at this point, I start using kids that maybe have had really good elementary music teachers or have taken piano or violin or something. And I start letting them be my leaders very, very early on in the class. Who can tell me what this is called? And chances are somebody is going to be able to tell me that this is called a quarter note. And if not, I'll tell them that it's called a quarter note. And every single time we have a quarter note in music, the metronome is going to click and our foot is going to go down, up. Every time we have a quarter note, our foot goes down, up. So I'm going to write a whole bunch of quarter notes up here. And all I want us to do is we're going to count these together, okay? You're going to know when to start because you're going to listen to me, and let's count these. Ready? Count these with me, everybody. Ready, set, and go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That was super easy, wasn't it? Okay, so now let me ask you a question. We're going to count this again. And this time while we're counting it, I want you to think about this question. Where is your foot when you said the number? Ready? Count this with me. Think about it. Ready, set, and go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Who can tell me? And their hands shoot up and they tell me that when they say the number, their foot is down. So I come up here and I put my number sign under the down arrow. Okay, so we're going to say the number when our foot is down, but we also have an up on our foot tap. So we're going to add something to our counting so that we have something happening on the up. We're going to say the number on the down, and when our foot goes up, we are going to add a pulse with our voice. So it's going to sound like this. It's going to sound like 1, 2, 3, 4. Try that with me. Ready, set, and ready, go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Very good. Let's try again. Hey, you stop tapping your foot. Get that going again with me. And I force the kids to tap their foot this entire time. The entire time they're sitting on the front half of their chair and they're tapping their foot. And Jenna and TJ, my 2 coworkers, are walking around at this point, just making sure that everybody's doing what they need to do. Everybody's sitting on the front half. Everybody's foot is still going. And we try again. Pulse it with me. Ready, set, and ready, go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Very good. So when our foot was down, we said the number. And when my foot is up, we're going to pulse with our voice. Okay, now let's pretend like this is a song. Super boring song. But as we're playing this song, you realize you have a question. And so you raise your hand and you say, Miss Williams, I have a question. And I say, what do you have a question about? And you say, I have a question about note number 6. Okay, well, what's your question? And you ask me. That's super easy, yes? But let's pretend like you're in honors band and you have a piece of music that has 3 full pages. And you raise your hand and you say, Miss Williams, I have a question about a note. And I say, which note do you have a question about? And you say, I have a question about note number 2468. And so then I go, okay. And 5 minutes later, I found the note that you have a question about. That's not very efficient, is it? No. So what we're going to do is we're going to take all of those notes and we're going to break them into smaller pieces. And I'm going to do so by doing this. Okay, I'm going to add these 2 lines. Does anybody know what these lines are called? Probably nobody's going to be able to tell me, but maybe somebody's going to be able to tell me that this is called a bar line. How many bar lines did I draw? 2, okay? So in between the bar lines, we have created something that is called a measure. And something magical happens every time I get to a bar line. When I'm counting, I'm going through and I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4. Something happens when I cross the bar line. Does anybody know what happens when you cross the bar line? And somebody who's taken piano or whatnot will tell me that we start over. Yeah, we go back to 1. All right, so let's go through and let's try this again. Ready? Down, up, get your foot going with me, count it with me, ready, set, and ready, go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Try again, someone said 5, ready, it's written on the board, try again, and ready, go. And we go through and we count it again. Okay, so now that we've gotten good at this, I gotta tell you, I've left out some information. So a quarter note does get 1 beat, but it gets 1 beat of sound. Who can tell me what the opposite of 1 beat of sound would be? Who can come up with another S word that means the opposite of sound? And somebody will tell me that the opposite of sound is silence. Okay, so if we have a quarter note that gets 1 beat of sound, we're gonna have something that gets 1 beat of silence. And that is my quarter rest. And this quarter rest, it looks like a Z with a C underneath it. And I can take this quarter rest and I can replace any quarter note with it. So let's replace this one. Now, is 3 gone? No, 3's not gone. 3 is silent. So what we're going to do is we're going to erase that 3, and instead we're going to put a little tiny 3 right here with a line through it. And that line is going to remind us that 3 is still there, but 3 is going to be silent. We're going to think 3 instead of saying 3, okay? So who thinks that maybe they could figure out what measure 1 sounds like with that added rest? And so I wait for a second because I'm not going to give the kids the information. I want one of the kids to tell me how to do it. And it may take us 5, 6, 20 times if it's tuba class for somebody to come up with the right answer. That was a tuba joke, by the way. So it's going to take us a while to figure out how we're going to count this, but some kid will tell me that we're going to count 1, 2, 4. And when they do it right way, we're all going to clap and we're going to have big cheers. And then we are all going to drill this measure a couple of times. And then I'm going to go through and I'm going to put beat 3 back. And this time I'm going to replace that one. And I'll say, okay, what do I need to write here? They'll tell me it needs to be a little 2 with a line through it. And that line tells us it's going to be silent, but it is still there. And we'll go through and we'll count this and we will do 40,000 versions of counting just this little bit. Now, this is a whole lot of theory that has been crammed in real time, exactly what I did for you. So like 10 minutes, maybe less than 10 minutes. So anybody that has no musical background whatsoever has learned about bar lines, they've learned about notes, they've learned about equal and opposite rest, they've learned about what their foot's doing, they've learned how we're going to count it. And yes, I'm a strong proponent for breath impulse counting, and we can talk about that later if you want. But they've learned a whole bunch of stuff. And so finally I say, okay, grab your pencil and open up to chart 1. And so on chart 1, they go through and everything that is written up here at the top of the board, they are going to go in and write in at the top of chart 1 in their own handwriting. And we go through and make sure that every kid has written it down because it is so important that they have this stuff written in their own handwriting from day 1. So then we go through and we count a whole lot of chart 1. Chart 1 is a lot of repetitive stuff. So like every single measure in the first line is the exact same thing. And I had somebody tell me one time that seemed like a waste, because like that's a whole lot of ink that was wasted for the same thing to happen over and over again. And let's be truthful, there's a lot of kids that need as much repetition on that one measure as possible to get it on day one. And so I want to make sure that they have plenty of material to really, really have this branded into their soul by the end of day one. And so then we go through at the end of day one, a lot of the classes have gotten a good feel for just quarter notes and quarter rests. So we may even start playing some games. The very first game that I introduced to the kids is a game called Mess Up Dropout. Probably a lot of y'all already play games like this, but where you go through and I say, okay, we're going to count measures 5 through 7 or whatever, or 5 through 7 would be a really short game, 5 through 12. And we'll go through and we'll count it at one speed. As soon as you mess up, you have to stop counting. And at the end of that section, you raise your hand if you're still in, but this time I make the metronome faster, and we do it again and again and again until they're counting really, really fast and there's only one person left. And I mean, it's just a super exciting way for them to automatically be having fun and being a little competitive with this on stuff that they really understand and have really gotten on this very first day. If we can't do that on the first day, no sweat. So that was day one. So on the second day, we'll start class by doing a little bit of review of our chart 1 and chart 1.5. And then we will jump into new material. And so I'll tell the kids, okay, today we are going to start with the world's most boring rhythm. And it's the most boring because everybody knows how to count this. Somebody tell me how to write the count for this. And they'll tell me big 1, big 2, big 3, big 4. Okay, so today we're going to start talking about what happens when I combine beats. Now, yesterday we learned about what kind of note. We learned about the quarter note. All right, and who remembers how many beats did that quarter note get? They can tell me it got 1 beat. Okay, so if I take 2 quarter notes and I tie them together to make one brand new note, how many beats is this brand new note going to get? And they'll tell me it's going to get 2. Okay, so today we are going to go through and we are going to combine these 2 notes. And when I combine these 2 beats, when I combine these 2 quarter notes, I'm going to get some new note that gets 2 beats. Does anybody know what kind of note does get 2 beats? And most years I have a kid in the class that can tell me it's called a half note. Some years I don't. So assuming that they don't, I'll go ahead and I'll tell them that today we are learning about a half note. And a half note gets 2 beats. And a half note looks sneakingly like a quarter note, except it's empty. Okay, so yesterday, let me go ahead and combine this real quick. Okay, so I can go through and erase that and put my half note in there. Okay, now we know it gets 2 beats. So there's my beat 1. Now where is beat 2? And most years the kids can instantly tell me that beat 2 is inside. This year I had a class that it took me forever to draw that information out of them, but they'll eventually tell me it's inside. I said, okay, so since beat 2 is inside of this, we're going to write it a little differently. We're going to put a little 2. Should I put a line through it? And the kids already know that the answer is no. They've never written the count for any other kind of note other than quarter notes, but they already know that you only put the line through it if it's for a rest. So they're already starting to draw their own conclusions. Okay, so we're gonna have our big 1, our little 2, 3, and 4. Okay, now yesterday when we were learning how to count that quarter notes get how many beats? 1 beat. Okay, when we counted that quarter note that got 1 beat, it got 1 beat, 1 foot tap, but it got 2 pulses with my voice. 1, 2, 3, 4. So by the power of math, if a quarter note gets 1 beat and 2 pulses, if a half note gets 2 beats, how many pulses is it gonna get? And anybody who has ever taken 5th grade math can tell me that it gets 4. Okay, so this new note, our half note, is going to get 2 beats, 2 foot taps. My foot's going to go down, up, and it's going to get 4 pulses with my voice. Who thinks that they could count this? And again, I turn on the metronome very quietly, and I let the kids start trying to come up with solutions. If nobody will volunteer to count it for me, I will volunteer them to count. And eventually we will get some kid that can tell us 1, 3, 4. And we'll talk, I'll remind them if I need to that our foot is moving like this. Whoops, doesn't move like that. I'll remember that they need to keep track of how many pulses it gets with their voice if they're struggling with this. But eventually we will get them to count that, and then we will do exactly what we did with the quarter notes. We'll go through and we will come up with every permutation of quarter notes and half notes that we can come up with. We'll go through and we'll put in quarter rests. We'll learn what a half rest is. And then we'll go through and I'll ask the kids to get out one of their note cards. Now, one of the supplies that the kids are supposed to get by that first day of school is they're supposed to have a stack of index cards. Doesn't matter, honestly, to me if they're lined or not, just that they're all the same color. And I tell them to get out one, and all of us go ahead and draw this chart on one of their note cards, and we start filling it in. So we come over here and say, okay, so the first note that we learned how to count was our quarter note. Okay, who can tell me how many beats the quarter note gets? It gets 1 beat. How many pulses does it get with my voice? It gets 2 pulses. And who can remember how to tell me how to draw the rest? Okay, it's a Z with a C. All right, today we learned a new note. Who can remember what the name of the new note was? And again, all of them have taken this like note definition and they've written it on the top of their chart. They tell me that we learned about a half note. The half note gets 2 beats, 4 pulses, and its rest looks like a little hat. And we'll again go through and play some games with it. They love playing mess up dropout, and we'll play mess up dropout every single day. Now, the kids have already been counting a little bit by themselves. I've been calling on kids to count 1 measure at a time. I make sure that every single time somebody counts something correctly, we are cheering and clapping. If they don't count it correctly, we just move on to the next person. It's just, there's no sweat if you make a mistake. We don't make a big deal about it at all. And so the kids are already starting to build some confidence of like performing in front of each other, even without the instrument. Okay, so then on day 3, so that was the 2nd day of school and the 3rd day of school. So now we're on the 4th day of school, and we're going to do very similarly to what we did with half notes. We're going to go back and we're going to start with our world's most boring rhythm. I always start with a rhythm that everybody feels super comfortable with, so that they're always making leaps with me in their understanding based on something that they know really well. We'll go through, we'll write in our big 1, big 2, big 3, big 4. Anytime a kid tells me how to write in the count, they have to specifically tell me if it's a big number or a little number, because they mean 2 completely different things in how we write in our count. So if the kid only tells me 1, I just kind of wait awkwardly, and then they're like, big 1. But that's really important, and I need them to be able to not only write it down, but also to be able to articulate what they're writing down. We write in count for at least, I would say, like 4 or 5 measures of music every single day. I do not let the kids write in the count for everything. And we talk about that would be kind of like cheating. Like if you had all of the answers to the history test written on your hand, that would be cheating. And if you have all of the numbers written down, that's cheating. You're not actually looking at the rhythms. But so we go through and we'll write it in for, like I said, 4 or 5 measures a day, just so they have something, like they're having to take what's in their brain and put it on paper. So we take our world's most boring rhythm, and just like yesterday, we combined 2 beats to create, what kind of note was that? A half note. Today, we're going to be combining all of the beats in the measure, and we're going to create a new note. So how many beats is this new note going to get? Okay, it's going to get 4 beats. Okay, so by the power of math, and this stays on the board the whole time, so they can go back and look at this with me. So if when we learned quarter notes, 1 beat got 2 pulses. When we learned half notes, 2 beats got 4 pulses. If we've got some new note that gets 4 beats by the power of math, how many pulses is it going to get? Okay, it's going to get 8 pulses. Does anybody know what kind of note gets the whole measure? What kind of note is going to get 4 beats the whole measure? And eventually somebody will tell me, hopefully, that it is a whole note. So this is the note definition that they're writing in their music. We'll go through and we will show that the foot taps 4 full times. That may seem excessive to have the kids write, but again, for some kids, that's going to be the point that they understand it. And then a whole rest looks like a hole in the ground. And then we'll go through and replace all of those beats with a whole note. Now, how do I need to change my count? How do I need to change these numbers to reflect this? And they'll tell me that I need to erase the big numbers and put a little 2, a little 3, a little 4, and then we will go through and count it. Now, so by the time we get to chart 3 includes everything that we know how to count. It's got quarter notes, it's got half notes, it's got whole notes. By the time we get to chart 3.5, and we will get to chart 3.5 within that third day of counting, it's got everything, it's got all of the rest included as well. So we will, generally this is like on Friday, because we usually start on Tuesday. So that takes us to the end of the week. That's a really good place to end because it gives them all of the really basic notes that they can count by the end of the week. And then we can move on to new material that next Monday. Now with chart 3, like I said, with quarter notes, half notes, and whole notes, this is where we start introducing steps that are going to translate to their instrument. So after we can go through and count this really well, within a day or two, we're going to go ahead and add the ta step. And whereas maybe, you know, we've been counting like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. When we're playing an instrument, we actually start notes with the tongue. And we say different things for different classes. If I'm teaching the trumpet or the trombone euphonium class, we're going to talk to the kids about doing this on ta. If I'm doing this with the tuba class, we're going to talk about doing this on toe. If we're doing this with the oboe or the clarinet or saxophone class, we're going to talk about doing this on T. So different classes have different syllables that we're going to use, but we talk to the kids about how you start each note. And since you don't say numbers into your instrument, you're going to start each note by saying ta. And I'm just going to say ta for today. But what we don't do when we play notes on our instrument is do the pulsing. And then I pick up my trombone and I show them how silly it would sound if I was doing the pulses that we've been counting with on the instrument. So what we're going to do with this ta step is we're going to say the ta every time we said the number, but then we're going to keep our air really steady through the notes. So whereas we were counting 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm going to ta it like this and ready, go. Ta, 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 ta. Try that with me. Ta it with me. Ready, set, and go. And the class sings ta, ta, ta. And that's as much information as I give it. I explain it, I demonstrate it, and then we do it. And at this point, we go back and forth on that chart 3 between counting and tawing. So I'll say, count line 1 with me. Ready, set, and go. And we will count it with pulses in our voice. Now that we are done, let's taw it. No pulses, go. Ta, 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 and we will do the exact same thing. So they are having to go back and forth between these 2 steps, and they're feeling what the air needs to do now that we're doing it on the instrument. Okay, the next day we will do the same thing, but this time we'll add it on airplay. And I don't over explain a lot of stuff. I demonstrate and then we move on. So we'll go through, we'll count it, we'll taw it, and then we talk about with a really basic, like I'm blowing on hot soup face. We go through and we airplay it on our hand, and we talk about how you should feel that the air is being separated by the tongue. And there's a lot of stuff, even just in this step with these beginners, that you can already start hearing. Like, let's say I'm doing it with the trombone class. And if we're airplaying this and I start hearing, I already know that the tongue is too high. So I can already be going through and talking to the kids about getting the tongue down lower in their mouth. If I hear nothing coming from the clarinet and oboe class when they're doing this on T, then I know that the tongue is too low. I mean, like there's all sorts of stuff that you can hear just in the airplay step that I'm already addressing that's going to make more sense on the instrument later, but we're doing it with just rhythm stuff. And the kids aren't bored by this. Like the first week, the first couple of weeks of most classes are pretty boring. Like they're going through the handbook a whole bunch. They're doing all of these get to know you games, and you can only get to know kids for so many periods of the day, and then they are over that. So they come to band and they are doing stuff the entire time. They come into the room and from bell to bell, we are doing real band stuff. And the fact that they have not touched their instrument is not a thing. They're not bothered by it. They've never been in band before. They don't know how to compare this to anything. So the fact that they come in, they're busy the whole period, they're getting to be loud the whole period, and they're playing games and smacking each other down with their mad counting skills, they are having a great time, and they have yet to touch the instrument yet. So we come back that Monday of the second week of school. We go through, we do some review counting, we learn how to do the toss stuff. And then I say, okay, so today we're gonna learn about something really weird. Today, let me go ahead and fill this in since I skipped that. Got my whole note, my pulses, and my rest. Okay, so today we are gonna learn about something weird. Today we're going to learn about a dot. And a dot does something really strange in music. A dot has half the value of whatever it's dotting. Okay, listen to me say that again. I know y'all know this. I'm just demonstrating my teaching skills. Let me say this again. A dot adds half the value of whatever it's dotting. So let's pretend like we had some weird note called like a dotted 4. Okay, so the dot is going to add half of what it's dotting. What is half of 4? Okay, it's going to add 2. So this weird dotted 4 note would get how many beats? It would get 6 beats. Okay, how many pulses would it get with my voice? It would get 12 pulses. Good. Okay, what if we had a dotted 10? What would that be? What is the dot going to add to the 10? The dot, half of 10 is 5, so it's going to add 5. So a dotted 10 would get 15 beats and 30 pulses, okay? Let's say we had a dotted 48. Okay, what's it going to add? It's going to add half of 48, which is 24. So this is going to get 72 beats. Please tell me that is correct. It is 72, right? Okay, thank you. Thank you for, okay, 72 beats. How many pulses is it going to get? It's going to get 144 pulses. And I get really silly with the numbers. Like I go way high, like we'll do like 500 and a dotted 512 note. And this is always an interesting game anyway, because it really shows me where my math-minded kids are. And it shows me who my honors band horns are going to be the next year. But like going through and seeing how these kids' minds work with these numbers. But on top of that, when you do really silly numbers with this, it sticks with them. Like they remember the silliness of this. And so we go through and we do a whole bunch of these. And then I say, okay, let's do a really hard one. What if we had a dotted 2? And they're like, what? And they all raise their hands because they want to tell me what the math equation for this would be. Okay, what would the math equation be for this? 2 plus 1 equals 3 beats. How many pulses is this going to get? It's going to get 6 pulses. Could I replace this 2 with a half note? And they're like, yes. And so now we've just explained dotted half notes in a way that is teaching the concept and not what it is. Because you always get those kids who think that the dot means add another beat. And so this way has gone through and it has required them to mathematically understand the concept of a dot. And we go through, we turn to chart 4, we go through and we write this as our note definition, we fill it in on the chart. And I tell them that there's really not a such thing as a dotted half note. But anyway, we go through and we do that. And so now they understand that concept of the dot. Now, I do want to talk a little bit for a second about the progression that we have used. So there seems to be like various ways that people want to approach what the first step in counting is. So like I wholeheartedly believe you should be teaching quarter notes at the beginning. Most beginner band books don't do that. Most beginner band books are going to start them on whole notes because they want the kids to have a chance to like produce a sound for longer than 1 beat. If you're in percussion, a lot of that stuff starts your kids on 8th notes. But I would say that like starting on whole notes is like teaching your 3-year-old how to count by 5s. Like you would never teach a toddler how to count by 5s or 2s or 3s or whatever. You would always start them by teaching them how to count 1, 2, 3, 4. And then counting by 5s would be a higher level concept. I wouldn't teach my kids how to add by teaching them fractions first and then putting them together into bigger pieces. So by starting with those quarter notes, you're starting them on the most basic unit of rhythm we can, and then everything can build off of that. Starting with a whole note, well, I just said all of that stuff, but that's why I think it is really, really important to start with that quarter note. Now, when they do start making sounds on their instrument, of course, we're going to start them on not tonguing and doing longer playing for a whole note. That's how we start them too. But by the time they've touched their instrument, they understand what all of those notes and rhythms already are. Okay, so we go through and we teach them some basic time signatures, just because I want them to have a lot of material just on those quarters, the halves, the wholes, and the dotteds before we do anything else. And we actually may pause on this. Some years at this point in time, depending on how the class is going, we'll go ahead and start the kids on the instrument at this point. There are definitely probably more years than not that I will go ahead and introduce eighth notes to them. So chart 6 is our eighth notes. And of course, we are always going to start with our world's most boring rhythm. They tell me how to write in the counts. And then we come over to the side, and this is really the first time we've talked about like the rhythm tree. And so I'll say to the class, once upon a time, we had a what? Whole note. And a whole note got how many beats? 4. How many pulses? 8. And we split that in half, and we got 2 whats? Half notes. Great. And each of those half notes got how many beats? 2. How many pulses? 4. And then we split that in half, and we got what kind of note? 2 quarter notes. And each of those quarter notes got how many beats? 1. How many pulses? 2. Well, today we are going to talk about what happens when I split that quarter note. First of all, somebody tell me the math behind this. Let's follow the pattern. How many beats are each of these new notes going to get? Okay, they're going to get half a beat. How many pulses are they going to get? It's going to get 1 pulse. Does anybody know what kind of note gets half a beat? Usually somebody will tell me an eighth note, sometimes not. Okay, so then we'll come over here. Okay, so today we are learning about some kind of note that gets half a beat. And it's going to get only 1 pulse. And we've already said, because a kid has told me, that we are talking about an eighth note. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to take our most boring measure, and we're going to come through and we're going to split each of these eighth notes. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to split this one into 2. And I'm going to split this one into 2. This one. Okay, so this is still beat 1. My foot is still down. This is still beat 2. My foot is still down. This is still beat 3. My foot is still down. This is still beat 4. My foot is still down. So where is my foot going to be on each of these? Okay, well, this is going to happen on the up. Okay, so since each of these are still the number, now we need some word to put right here. And we are going to call these Tay. Now, as I said at the very beginning, I wholeheartedly believe that the best counting system is a consistent counting system. If you are a 1 and 2 and, great. If you are a 1 Tay, 2 Tay, great. I wholeheartedly believe in the Tay system simply because it starts reinforcing articulation very early on. And I will always have one band director that's like, I can't count 1 T teta that fast. And it's like, if you can't say 1 T teta that fast, you also can't tongue 1 T teta that fast. So that's a lame excuse. We make our percussionists learn tays and tees and taws and all of that kind of stuff too. We all do that, but I do think that it cleans up articulation. And I've had a couple of band directors tell me that they have like half-heartedly switched to the Eastman counting system, which uses tays, you know, just to try it. And by the end of the year, we're convinced because of the clearness that their band kids were using because of the articulation that comes with the tees. But whatever system is fine as long as all of you are doing it. So then we go through and I turn the metronome really far down. Sometimes I turn it down to like 55. And at this point, I'll get the metronome going really, really slow for a couple of seconds just for them to get their foot going. And then I will really quietly turn on the eighth note, which is great with the harmony director since you can change the volume with this. Just so they have that feel of where the up is. And then I'll start counting. This is the one time that I count it without them first. So I say, okay, so as we're doing this, get your foot going with me. We're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 Tay, 2 Tay, 3 Tay. Join me here. 1, 2. And then we repeat this together several times on the board. Okay. So we get that, we go through and we talk about how an eighth note can be drawn individually like this, but we'll often see it like this, or we will see it like this. And that an eighth rest looks like a fancy 7. And then we go through and they have to write all of this. So I'll ask them to write the rhythm definition up at the top left-hand corner of their paper. And then in the top right-hand corner of their paper, they have to copy all of this down. They have to do all of the dotted lines. They have to do all of the arrows. They have to line up the notes. We are really picky with the kids as we're walking around while they're drawing this. If they aren't lining up the notes so that the numbers line up and the Tay is in the middle, we make them erase it and do it again, because I really want them to see that it is a visual representation of when things happen. So like I said, a lot of years we get to this point before we start the kids on the instrument. So after we have gone through eighth notes, the next day, that will be the day that the kids are allowed to get out their instruments. Now, I told y'all at the beginning that we have the kids do note flashcards. And one of the things that we're doing throughout these first 2 weeks of school is we start doing flashcard races. This year, since we were all online, we did all of that on that musictheory.net website. We did our flashcard test on there. And the rule for our kids is that you have to be able to do your 10 flashcard or your 8 flashcards, because they learn the first octave of their instrument, whatever octave best serves that instrument. So like if I'm a flute, my flutes are going to learn third line B to be above the staff. If I'm a clarinet, they're going to learn low A to second space A. Same thing for trumpets. Trombones learn B to B. Tubas learn B to B, but they learn their first octave of flashcards, and they have to do those 8 cards in 10 seconds for them to earn opening their instrument. And so like several days before we want to start them on their instrument, we start doing these flashcard tests. And finally we're like, guys, you got to get these passed if you want to open your instrument the next day. And we are really picky about it. And if they don't pass their flashcard test, they don't get to open their instrument. And then the next day they can. The next day they can pass their flashcard test, because there was like an expectation. They didn't meet it. They saw that there was a real consequence, and the next day they do it. But so we go through and, you know, we take a couple of days, like the clarinets are going to take a couple of days learning how to put on reeds. But in the meantime, we have all of this rhythm stuff that we can be doing with them. We can do group flashcard work. So there's a lot of theory now that the kids can do while we're doing those early steps. And when we finally are starting to make sounds, we still spend the first chunk of class every single day on rhythm. And, you know, that chunk that we might spend on rhythm and note card or flashcards starts lessening, you know, the more we know how to do on our instrument. But initially we might still spend like 15 minutes on rhythm, and then the rest of class on the instrument. Now, like I told you, when we were doing the whole notes and learning how to taw and that kind of stuff, within this time that we are teaching them all of this rhythm stuff up through eighth notes, one of the things that we do is on our whole notes chart, one of several of the lines ends with a measure with a whole note on it. Let's say it's measure 12. So we go through and we talk about the perfect whole note in this measure, and we go through and we write our count in. Okay, so first of all, we know that a whole note gets 4 beats. It's 4 beats, it gets 8 pulses with my voice. So what beat number is a whole note going to end on? And we end up having that whole conversation about how it doesn't end on 4, it ends on 1 of the next measure. And so then we go and we take that, this is like, we draw this in our chart, and we go through and we draw the perfect whole note, and we talk about how it starts exactly on beat 1, and it's going to end exactly right here, which is where the next measure starts. And it's going to stay super, super steady. Our air is going to stay incredibly steady, and it's the same the entire time. And then we'll go through and we'll count it. We'll go 1, 2, 3, 4. Taw it with me. Ready, set, and ready, go. Ta. And inevitably, when we taw it, the kids don't end at the same time. They're not keeping track of getting all the way to beat 4. So this is when we teach the kids how to touch the cutoff. So this is what we teach them how to do. When they get to beat 1 of the next measure, they are actually going to tap their music stand with their finger when they get to the end of the note, so that they have a visual representation of when the sound stops. So now we'll go ta, and their voice doesn't stop until they touch the music. And then we'll go through and we'll air play it, and we'll do the exact same thing where we're touching the cutoff. And that touching the cutoff will extend into every single chart that we do. So it doesn't matter what chart we're doing now that we know how to touch the cutoff, now that we know that when you get to the end of sound, you touch the silence, we do that on every single chart. So if we're counting 1, 4, 3, 4, We touch every single cutoff. We go through and we do that with time. So that, again, there's a visual representation of when the sound stops and the silence begins. So we've gone through and we have learned how to count this perfect whole note. We've learned how to taw and touch the cutoff for the perfect whole note. We have learned to airplay the perfect whole note. And we do this in a loop, a continuous loop of going from counting to tawing to airplaying, because the next step on this is going to be actually doing it on the instrument. So exactly what you would see us doing, let's say we're in flute class, we create our whole note loop, and I'll open up to chart 3. Let's do this. I'm going to back up in case it's loud on the thing, but we'll go through and I'll say, ready, whole note loop, ready, count it for me, ready, set and count it, go. 1, taw it with me, ready, set and ready, go. Taw, airplay it with me, ready, set and go. All right, let's get it up on our face. Ready, 1 and 2, ready, play this with me, ready, set and ready, go. And I keep touching as they do this. Obviously, they're not going to touch, but the very first time we ever make a sound on our instrument, like we'll go through and I will help them set up the flute. I help them get it in. We've already talked quite a bit in our classes about what the perfect embouchure looks like. We've practiced it on our fake flute. We have our mirror on our stand. We have all of this. And the very first time they ever make a sound, it's in that whole note loop. So we get everything started. And the very first time we do it, we go through and we'll taw it with it on our face. We go ahead and sing ta. Okay, are y'all ready now? This is gonna be exciting. If nothing comes out of your flute, it's okay. But if nothing comes out, you're gonna keep blowing all the way to beat 1, yes? If something comes out, we'll celebrate in a second. Ready, down, up, ready. Let's see what happens, go. Yes, raise your hand if you got a sound out. And like 2 people will raise their hand and it will be very depressing. But we go through, and the very, very first time that every single instrument makes a sound on their instrument, because we've been doing all of this prep work before it. We've already been talking about embouchures in every class. We've already been doing stuff in front of the mirror in every class. But the first time they make the sound, they play the perfect whole note, and it doesn't sound good at all. But they know when it starts, they know when it stops, and everybody knows how to do it on time. They've already shown me that they can taw it. They've already shown me that they can airplay it, and I should be able to expect you to start and stop at the right time. So it takes that chaos that can definitely happen at the beginning of the year with early sound production, and it turns it into something that can stay as organized as we would like it to stay, even with this. And because it's a loop, and because they've already practiced this tawing and airplaying loop, now we can loop the making sound of it too. So they'll get 40,000 different opportunities to try their whole note again, and to try their embouchure, and to try to get a sound, and all of this kind of stuff within, you know, like a minute's time. And we'll go for like a solid minute, and then we'll stop, and I'll go through and as they're doing this minute of the loop, and I'm talking to them while they're doing this, I'm noticing who I need to tell very specific things. And I'll go through and I'll tell each kid, okay, hun, I think we need to go back and we need to catch the fog again, blah, blah, blah. I'm telling each kid specific things, and like, y'all ready to do it again? Let's jam, get it back up on your face. Let's check our mirror, check your partner. We go through and we'll sing it on taw a couple times to get that loop back in our head. And then we do it on the instrument. Let's see, what sort of time do we have? Okay. Let's see. So we only have a few minutes left of me just babbling. So let me ask you, Glenn. So are you feeling like I should keep going with how we're introducing new rhythms, or would you like me to rather talk about how we continue using rhythm in our everyday classes through?
Yeah, I think that could be cool. I mean, I think because this is the beginner level. So like, how does this work with your older kids? Yeah, that might be cool.
Okay, so here, let me open this on my computer so I can go through all this stuff. All of my mini computers. Okay, so we really think that rhythm is a fundamental that we should be approaching just like we would do any other fundamental. Meaning that like all of us are working on tone production with our older kids every day, and we should be working on the rhythm stuff every day as well. You know, For some, that means that we're counting something every day, whether it be a rhythm chart, especially at the beginning of the year, and especially, you know, the lower in the bands you go, you're going to see the rhythm charts coming out more and more on a daily basis anyway. Like we have our 3 performing groups at Styles. All 3 of our bands at the very beginning of the year will dig out rhythm charts every single day for a while. We'll go through and we'll count them. We will taw them. I make them sing them. We play them every single day. TJ's band will continue doing that most of the year, just because that's so important, and it's a really easy unison way to make sure that that rhythm stuff is still happening. We don't just go across the page. We go through and we'll usually do 4 to 8 measures at a time, just so it's a long enough chunk that we have something to evaluate. But we don't just count a line. Sometimes we count columns. We teach them columns very early in the year, like within the 2nd or 3rd day that we're counting, just so, because it works their brain differently to have to go down the page to going across. We teach them how to crisscross, where they go diagonally down the page and they think they've done magic when they do that. I'll have the kids only count odd measures. We do duet counting, like where maybe we have 2 instrument classes going on at any given period. Like, so for example, in 2nd period, it's clarinets and horns. So maybe the clarinets are going to count lines 1 and 2, while the horns count the bottom 2 lines. So they're already having to start thinking about listening to other parts while they're counting their stuff. Those days get very silly because I make the kids count really loud to cover up the other parts. And so then it's like scream counting, and the people walking down the hall are wondering what sort of chaos we're creating in the band hall. We do pass around counting, where, like, say maybe the first row is going to count the first line, and when they get to the 2nd row, they're going to drop off, and the 2nd row is going to take over the 2nd line, and then the 3rd row is going to take over the 3rd line. So they're having to pass and be ready. They have to keep track of where we are in the music and be ready to hop in. We scream count. And just as fun as scream counting is whisper counting. Don't ask me why counting in whispers is hilariously funny, but the kids love whisper counting. Like I said, even with our older kids, we're finding something that they can write in the count for. I mean, heck, with these Midwest sectionals that I've been doing with my band the last couple of weeks, we've been writing in count all over the place. One of the songs that we're playing, like the low brass, are playing 1, 2, tay, 4, 1, 2, tay, 4. And so we went through and we wrote it in, and then we spent all that time going through and counting that stuff, just like we would do in beginner band. Everything that we do in beginner band, we continue doing in 7th and 8th grade. Like, we don't approach this as like it's a beginner skill and then we can move on. Everything that we did in 6th grade, you're going to see us do in 7th and 8th grade again. Let's see, we've already talked about how they do that note breakdown definition at the top. We do that index card. Okay, so like I said, we go through and we taw and tee our charts. We don't pulse when we do that. I've already told you about how we do the touching the cutoff. We do that even in 7th and 8th grade. One thing that I have been doing in my sectionals for the last couple of weeks in one of our pieces, we have been doing something called arrow counting, or down and up counting. And so what that is, one of the pieces that my band is playing, the entire band has in unison 1, tay, 1, which you can imagine is a total mess. And so we go through and we count it, but it doesn't matter how many times you count or taught. If the kids aren't subdividing and keeping track of where on the beat that happens, it jacks them up. So we go through and we learn how to count stuff in 6th grade with arrows. So for example, if it was just quarter notes, they would count down, or down, 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 up, down, down, up, down, and they count where their foot is when the note happens. So now in my honors band sectional, I'm going through and counting down, up, down. That also helps when you're doing like dotted quarter notes and teaching them how to do dotted quarter notes. One of the things that we do, dotted quarter notes are actually the first time that we really approach the idea of counting in arrows. So we have the kids transition to counting down, up, down, and they have to over exaggerate the up, and they have to commit to when the up happened. And so you get some really weird scream sessions in dotted quarter note counting, but going through and counting where the foot is. So now they also have, like, in their mind and in their foot, a visualization of where that beat happens. Like I said, we airplay our charts a lot, especially in 7th and 8th grade when we're very first learning how to sight read with the kids. There's a lot of air playing where they're just exactly doing what I did with y'all a second ago, where we're doing it out of a real basic embouchure. We do a lot of sizzling where they're just going. Sizzling is great for checking note lengths. I know that y'all know that because y'all are all very experienced band directors, but we sizzle charts because when you teach it on charts first, then it translates better to the music. Obviously, we play the charts and we play them on, Concert F a whole lot. Note, if you're going to tell the kids to play it on Concert F, you should specifically tell them to play it on Concert F, because once you say, let's F it, class is done. Which I have definitely made that mistake before. So we play it a lot on Concert F. We go through, and with the beginners, we're also teaching the kids how to play quarterly. So like my flute class is actually a flute double reed class. So then you can get, like, say, the flute or the bassoons on the root, the flutes on the fifth, and the oboes, which we hope is just a little bit on the third, and we can start hearing what chords are. It's great for you to have the kids play it on terrible notes. So like if your brass kids suck at B natural, like we all do, they have lots of opportunity to practice pushing that air through the instrument and using a good tone on something that's super easy. What else do? We go through and we play the charts backwards, where you literally now you don't count them backwards because that ruins lives, but you can go through and taw the charts backwards, airplay the charts backwards, play the charts backwards, because again, it's a mental game for them. It's also like mini sight reading. We use the charts to learn how to do different types of articulation. That's when we first learn how to do accents and staccatos. It's how we first learn how to do double tonguing. We do a lot of speed counting because beginner band can get trapped at 72. That's our like official beginner band speed is 72. And they can get trapped into thinking that everything happens at that. So we start introducing them to new tempos through speed counting. We use the early charts to teach cut time. So I'll go back, and when it's time to teach cut time, I'll go back to chart 2 and 3, which is using like just half notes and quarter notes, using just whole notes, quarter notes, and half notes. And we teach cut time that way, so that we have lots of material now to practice cut time on before we need to put it into a song. In beginner band, our earliest chair tests come from the charts. In fact, that perfect whole note is the very first thing I ever give them a grade on for playing. Can you start on time? Can you end on time? And can you play something pretty steady in the middle? But we go through and regularly have them do some sort of chair test or some sort of assessment where they're having to play or count for me. When it gets into some of the harder charts, sometimes it's just counting. We go through, I told you how to play Mess Up Dropout, but another game that we play with the rhythm charts is Don't Break the Chain. And this is like highly competitive. So we go through and we have the kids sit in fairly even numbered rows. And the way Don't Break the Chain works is like, say the first row, this is a team sport. So row 1 is a team. And so say we're going to count chart 2. So the first person in row 1 counts measure 1, and then they pass measure 2 to person 2, and then they pass measure 3 to person 3, and it goes all the way down, and you only get the number of points based on how many measures you count correctly. So if a kid comes in late, it's done. If a kid says the wrong number, it's done. If the very first kid wasn't listening and I counted them off and they didn't play it, they get 0 points, but they only get points based on how many measures get counted perfectly. And then it goes to this is a 3-round game. So that was round 1. And then it goes to row 2 and it goes to row 3. When we do round 2, we start on the other side of the room. And when it gets to round 3, we start in the middle of the row. Now, let's say you get all the way to the end of the row, you just bounce back and come right back around again. So like, I've had classes before they're always clarinet classes for some reason, that get all the way through the chart because they just keep bouncing back and forth. The flutes never make it all the way through, and then they hate each other and talk smack about each other when class is over. And the tubas mess up on the first one. My tubas are very smart. I make these tuba jokes, but you know how tuba works. We also go through with our beginners, and with some of our classes, we do melodic playing of these charts. So when we are learning how to change partials, in like, mostly this happens with like our trombone, euphonium, and my flute class does this. When we're learning how to change air direction. We'll go through and we'll say, okay, every single time you have a half note, you're going to play it as a middle. And every single time you have a quarter note, you're going to play it low. So if they have 1, 3, 4, when we go back and play it melodically, we would play middle, low, low. And so now they can start thinking about what their faces and their air direction are going to have to do on something that is simplistic as the charts that we've been playing. For flutes, it's the same thing when we're going through and we're playing closed flute and we're practicing moving our air for the high and the low partial. When we're doing this melodic playing, this is when we teach our kids how to do the steps. And like, these are the same steps that like we talk about on the podcast or whatever that we have up here on this poster above here, where we go through and we learn how to count to whatever we're about to play. We go through and we taught, we note name it, we finger it, we sing it on partials, we'll sing it on positions, and then we go through and we play it. With our band classes, like I said, we start the year doing nothing but counting. Every single day, my band counts something, whether it be, okay, everybody, let's count the first 8 measures of the march. And we all go through and we count it. We all go back and we taught, we airplay it, we sizzle it, we play it. So I'm trying to, I'm like teaching them how to practice during band class. Like if they got a new piece of music, I would want them to go home and count it first. I would want them to go through and figure out the fingerings before they try to synthesize all of it. I would want the beginners to do the same thing. So I'm like reinforcing those practice skills by, on a daily basis, some chunk of what we're going to play in class is going to get counted. It's going to get taught. It's going to get fingered. It's going to get burped. It's going to get airplay. It's going to get all of the things every single day through that stuff. Like I said, we mix in the counting charts as part of our warm up. We count a lot in our band hall. Sectionals are there's a ton of sectionals that are spent counting stuff and sizzling stuff. And it's like, you can play the most beautiful note, but if it doesn't happen at the right time, it's wrong. And it's the same thing when you're trying to clean up a band, when everybody in your band is playing everything correctly, but the timing and the rhythm are not super, super clean. That's when your band sounds messy and muddy. So going through and spending all of that time working this rhythm and all of these different variations of the rhythm. I know that, like, since y'all are mostly experienced teachers, I mean, like bopping, going through and teaching the kids how to bop the charts, like bopping where you only play the beginning. So if you had like 1, 2, 3, 4, they would bop just ta, 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 and they would play just the fronts of the notes. I mean, that is working on rhythm. That's showing that they like are internalizing the subdivision correctly. And so we go through and we teach them on the charts first. Our 7th and 8th graders, we don't teach bopping in 6th grade, but when they're in 7th and 8th grade and we go through and we teach them how to bop, we go right back to the charts. We count it, we taught, we airplay it, and then we learn how to bop it. And then we can go through, after we can do that on some charts, then we can go through and we can start applying it to music. And that's when stuff really starts cleaning up. I mean, yes, tone production is awesome. Obviously, we're all going to continue working on tone production, but I think that there are a lot of band directors out there that they spend time in beginner band learning rhythm stuff with their kids, and then they already know it. And so then that doesn't get readdressed in 7th and 8th grade. And the higher you go, like those are the things that make your band sound super clean and super tight, is honing in on that rhythm stuff. Yeah, so this would be, I guess, the point where y'all, if y'all have questions, I'm happy to answer them. If y'all have comments, I'm happy to take those as well. All that kind of good stuff. Michael says, what is your required speed on your flashcard quiz? 10 seconds for 8 cards is what they're aiming for. Now, is that what ends up actually happening? So the first couple of days, if they don't get it in 10 seconds, then we make them go home and study it again. And the next night they have to try it again, or the next day. As the days go on, the 10 seconds gets a little longer every time. So maybe the kids are passing it in 12 seconds, but good job for getting it in 10, or 15 seconds, good job. Or that kid that literally wore their shoes on the wrong feet all of 6th grade, passed it in like 45 seconds, and everybody cheered just as much for that kid as when the first couple of kids got it in 10. Now, when we did it for this year, when we had to do it on the musictheory.net thing, we still went ahead and have y'all used that for flashcards before? Because you can go through and set up specific tests. And so I was able to test specific octaves with specific classes. So for that, what we had the kids do was we had, I think, 20 notes that I had set up that they were given. The shortest amount of time you could do was a minute, but when they finished the test, it timestamps it. So it tells that when they got their timestamp for the end of their test, it had to show that they got all 20 correct in 30 seconds. And when they got a timestamp of 20 and 30, then they submitted the test to me, and that they submitted it through Google Classroom. They just linked that website to me, and that way I could see that they got their 20 and 30. But so that's how we did it this year. And honestly, oh my gosh, honestly, I will probably use the Music Theory Net version forever. Timer, saving electricity. Texas needs to save all of the electricity we can. They'll turn off my dadgum air conditioner again. So Victoria asked, with the 10 seconds, how do you work it into IEPs? That's exactly what we do. So we just, the kids that are supposed to have extra time, they get extra time in the form of more seconds. And of course, we always have, every year you'll have like that kid who just continues struggling with it, and you do what you need to do. I mean, like, the point is not to make them feel bad about themselves. The point is to get them to learn these notes early on and to feel some success in that, and to get the dadgum instrument out of the case. So we do what we need to do to make it work. What do you do with the kids who come into beginner band and are already way beyond learn how to read rhythms? Well, the good news is, Jamie, and we do have, like, for example, we have one of our feeders that has an amazing elementary music teacher. She was an Army band flute player. And so our kids from her school come in knowing all of the things. Or we'll get those piano kids that are like, have given like 40,000 recitals and now they're in beginner band. And at that point, it's the way that we keep it so entertaining and so fast paced. And those kids want to like show off that they know this stuff. So any opportunity I have to use them as an example for the class to demonstrate some counting stuff, they're the ones that want to win, mess up, drop out every single time. They're the ones that take it super serious. And we keep it moving so quickly and so silly. Like, I mean, the way we do it, like, I don't know, the first like 2 weeks of school, I go home absolutely exhausted because I feel like I'm doing a stand-up comedy routine in all of my beginner classes with this counting stuff. But dadgummit, like, they need to think that band is super awesome in those first 2 weeks, because that's the 2-week window that they can drop band. So like every day that they're coming, they are having a great stinking time, whether they have come in with 0 experience or 5 years of experience. And like I said, using those kids to be your example people, using those kids to tell us how to write in the count, all of those kinds of things. But I don't know if I've ever had someone that like came in with a lot of experience and then was bored to tears just because of how fast paced we're keeping it. And I don't mean fast pace of how quickly we're getting through material. I mean, literally how fast paced I move in class. Like, I'm a pretty fast talker. And surely, like, when I was going through this stuff at the very beginning, like, it's rapid fire, and that's how fast we're going through it in class too. Like, there's not a lot of downtime, and there's not a lot of time for them to think that they're bored, because I just am simply not giving them time to feel that way, honestly. But so maybe, I hope that answers your question. Who else? Which beginning band method book do we use that starts on quarter notes? Mine doesn't even start on quarter notes. We use Essential Elements, and it starts on whole notes. Like I said at the beginning, I think every single beginner book is bad for various reasons. Like, there's not a single good beginner method that is written that serves every single kid, unless you have a beginner method that has a completely different book for each instrument, which none of us would use because it would not serve our needs. Unless you had that, they're all terrible. So it's just a matter of picking the one that you get really good at teaching and then making it fit what you do. So, like, for example, since like, we don't start in the beginner book for a long time, there was, like, just to show how far, there was one year that I know for a fact my flute started in the beginner book on October 31st, because I looked at the calendar and realized the next day was November 1st. And I was like, there is no way my flutes are starting in the book in November. We will start today. And so, like, we started then, but we're doing so much other, like, supplementary stuff with the kids. Like, Obviously, we're learning how to do just sound production. We're going through and we're learning how to play those charts on our instrument. We're going through and learning some really basic warm-ups. So by the time we jump into the book, that line 1 of whole notes is so boring and so old hat. Like, we open up page 4 and 5, which is the first 2 like plain books. And I'm like, does this look super easy to y'all? And all of the kids are like, this is baby stuff. And I was like, well, then we should fly right through this. But then we immediately start transferring everything that we've been doing in the charts to those beginner books. So like the very first thing we do on line 1, where all they play is concert F for a whole note, is we go and we draw our little perfect whole note picture in the book and remind them that they have to go all the way to beat 1. And we go through and we do all of the things that we were just doing, where we counted it, taught it, air played it on these really basic lines, because they're basic now. And we start cross-applying that into the beginner book. Yeah, so we use Essential Elements. Is there a better book? Maybe, I don't know. But I've taught with that book for so long that I like know exactly what I want to do with those songs and how I want to make them more interesting and what order I want to teach them in, because I don't teach them in that order. See, with your older groups beyond rhythm charts, is there another book you use? For rhythm, not really. We do use the Blue Book, the Foundation for Superior Performance. We use this every single day in our classes. We start using it in 6th grade, like second half of the 2nd semester. We start doing some real basic stuff. Like, we teach all of the kids the Remington in there, the 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D. And like, this is actually how we've been doing a lot of our sectionals with my kids, since they're like just now getting into a band experience. The very first thing that we started doing was those Remingtons, and we've been going through and learning the basic lip slur stuff out of here. But there's, if you've never used this book, it's great for giving you exercises to do in different keys. The one thing that we do, there's a couple things we do rhythmically, so I'm glad you asked this. There is the on the bottom of page 3, the articulation stuff that we use for yes, there's counting and we deal with rhythm and subdivision during the rest and all that kind of stuff, but it's mostly an articulation thing. Also in that same thing, we'll go through and with the long tones, we'll go through and we'll play it in half notes. Then I'll have the brass kids switch and they're burping it while the woodwinds are subdividing it with tongued 8th notes. And then we'll put the brass back on the instrument, and now they are subdividing with tongued 8th notes, but the woodwinds are doing tongued 16th notes now. Or maybe we'll have everybody do it in tongued triplet subdivision, and then we'll have a measure that they do it in 8th note subdivision and a measure they do it in triplet subdivision, and then they switch back and forth, so they're having to practice switching subdivision gears during the rests. So that's one of the things that we're doing with rhythm still. Through a lot of subdivision stuff with that. To use custom settings on sight read. You know what? We haven't used Sight Reading Factory yet. We're going to do that next year for the very first time. I'm super excited about it. With our sight reading stuff, we mostly use a book called the Sight Reading Book, which is really old, and it's by the people that made that Digimet a billion years ago. Do any of y'all use those books? They're really easy sight reading books. I mean, just like all sight reading books are. But yeah, so Leah, I'll let you know what we do with Sight Reading Factory once we start using it. For my flashcard quiz, are the kids looking at a note and students are saying the fingering? With some of them, we've done that in years before, but that's not a regular thing that we do. Mostly with the flashcards, we're just saying the note name. Do our beginners have band every day? Well, they didn't this last year. This last year we went to 90-minute block scheduling, and it was the pits. And we are going back to having 45-minute classes every day next year. Thank God, because that was a contentious spring semester arguing about that.
Well, tell you what, you guys, since we're going to have Darcy back again next week, which is so cool, if you have some questions and they don't really get hashed out in the discussion post this week, I mean, I know she'd be happy to recircle on some of this stuff. And then next week, we're going to focus on more tone production and those kinds of things, right?
And fundamental type stuff, yeah.
That's going to be great. So yeah, we really appreciate your enthusiasm on this. And I really think that your point about the pacing, the enthusiasm, like the not letting them think that it's boring is my favorite thing about watching you even just demonstrate all of this is like, man, you could have been teaching me about how many seeds are in a cantaloupe this evening, and I would have been like really into it. Like I want to know more. So I can see why your students are likely very successful with rhythm. So this is so cool. Yeah. So everyone, thanks for chiming in. We get Darcy back again next week, which we're so thankful for your time, and we'll see you next Tuesday at the same time. So
Awesome. Cool.
yeah, enjoy the rest of your evening. Everybody else, I'll be here if you need me. But thanks again, Darcy. Have a great night.
Bye. See y'all
Cool.
next week.
Thanks again. All right. If you need anything class-wise, folks, let me know. Otherwise, you're free to go.
Glenn, this is James.